2018, over Wisconsin. Now, let's go ahead and talk about one of the most overrated teams of the past decade, the 2018 Wisconsin Badgers. You guys remember the hype around this team? Most people thought this was finally the year. They came in ranked number 4 in the AP preseason poll, tied for the highest in school history. That wasn't just a number, it was a statement. Big Ten title contention, maybe even a college football playoff spot. Momentum was there too. In 2017, they went 13-1 and capped it off with an Orange Bowl win. The roster looked stacked. Jonathan Taylor was back and already being mentioned as a Heisman favorite. The offensive line returned almost intact, which is always a big deal in Wisconsin's run-heavy offense. Analysts, polls, and even advanced models like Football Study Hall were buying the hype. Yes, the schedule had hurdles, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, but everyone believed this group could clear them. Then reality showed up. Wisconsin finished the year 8-5 overall. 5-4 in Big Ten play. Solid on paper, but nowhere close to the expectations of a top 4 team. They stumbled early with a shocking loss to unranked BYU at home. Later, they dropped the rivalry game to Minnesota, ending a 14-game winning streak in that series. A real gut punch for fans. By the end, they weren't sniffing the conference title or playoff talk. To be fair, Jonathan Taylor delivered. He led the entire FBS with 2,194 rushing yards, won the Doak Walker Award, and looked every bit like a superstar. But the passing game was inconsistent. Alex Hornibrook threw nearly as many interceptions as touchdowns. The defense gave up big plays at the wrong moments. Under Washington State. For our underrated team in 2018, we've got the Washington State Cougars. While Wisconsin had all the preseason hype, Washington State quietly went about building one of the best seasons in school history. Nobody was really talking about them in August, and most people didn't expect them to do anything beyond scraping together a solid bowl. But under Mike Leach, they turned into one of the toughest teams in the Pac-12. They ended up finishing 11-2 overall and 7-2 in Pac-12 play, tied for the Pac-12 North, and capped it off with an Alamo Bowl win over Iowa State. That's not just a good year for Wazoo, that's an all-time season for the program. Their offense was classic Leach. High tempo, pass happy, and always fun to watch. But the defense also came through in big moments. They weren't just a one-trick pony. They found balance when they needed it most. They pulled off wins people didn't see coming, handled pressure in big spots, and never looked like a team scared of the moment. That bowl win over a tough Iowa State squad, it polished off the year perfectly and showed they could hang with anyone outside the Pac-12 too. Because there wasn't playoff talk or national title hype at the start, every victory felt like Wazoo was proving people wrong. Most expected them to survive the season, but they did much more. They delivered statement wins. And that's exactly why Washington State in 2018 deserves the underrated label. 2017, overrated, Florida State, FSU. For our next team, let's move back into the ACC and talk about Florida State in 2017. At the start of that year, the Seminoles carried huge expectations. They were fresh off a strong finish to 2016, closing the year with 5 straight wins in 7 of their last 8, including a dramatic Orange Bowl victory over Michigan. That gave them momentum and the belief they were back among the nation's elite. The roster also looked loaded. DeAndre Francois was expected to take the next step at quarterback after an impressive freshman season. On defense, they had proven stars like Derwin James and Tarverse McFadden, players who gave FSU a real edge and made people think they could lean on defense even if the offense had to find its rhythm. Analysts and fans alike circled FSU as an ACC contender and a possible college football playoff team if everything broke their way. But things unraveled quickly. Francois went down with a season-ending injury in the opening game against Alabama, leaving freshman James Blackman to take over. That loss of leadership at quarterback derailed the offense from the start. The Seminoles struggled to find consistency, finishing just 7-6 overall and 3-5 in ACC play. Instead of competing for the conference, they slipped to the middle of the pack. Losses piled up and some weren't just close. The blowout loss to Boston College, for example, highlighted real problems on both sides of the ball. In the end, FSU 2017 became a lesson in how hype can crash into reality. Injuries exposed depth issues, execution faltered, and expectations faded. On paper, they looked like a powerhouse. In reality, they were ordinary, and that's why this Seminoles team stands out as overrated. Underrated, UCF, University of Central Florida Knights. I'll be honest, nobody was circling UCF as a big national story heading into 2017. Just 2 years earlier, they went 0-12. And while Scott Frost had boosted them to 6 wins in 2016, most people thought they were still a couple of seasons away from relevance. Playing in the AAC, respect doesn't come easy, and the Knights had to prove themselves against a schedule that didn't automatically command national headlines. For most fans and analysts, they were just another solid group of 5 team hoping to make a decent bowl. But then they shocked everybody. UCF went 11-0 in the regular season, the first time in school history they pulled off a perfect run before bowls. And they didn't just win, they lit up scoreboards. The Knights averaged 48.2 points per game, the best offense in the nation, and they racked up yards at a pace few could keep up with. It wasn't just style points either, they won big games. They knocked off Maryland, Navy, SMU, and Cincinnati, and the War on I-4 showdown with USF was an instant classic. A high-scoring shootout that sealed the division for them. Then came the statement moments. UCF outlasted Memphis in a double overtime thriller to win the AAC championship and capped it all off with a Peach Bowl win over number 7 Auburn, a program that had beaten both Alabama and Georgia that season. That victory turned heads, even if the CFP committee never gave them real playoff consideration. And that's where the underrated label fits. UCF was undefeated, but as a group of 5 school, they never got the respect of a playoff contender. Yet their story mattered. From 0 to 12 to undefeated in 2 years, they showed how fast a program can turn around. More than that, they forced a national conversation about playoff access and respect for outsiders. UCF 2017 wasn't just good. It was proof that underdogs can shake the whole system. 2016, over Notre Dame. You guys probably remember the noise around Notre Dame heading into 2016. Most people thought the Irish were locked in for a big year. They started ranked number 10 in the AP preseason poll, which signals playoff contender vibes. The schedule looked stacked: Texas, Michigan State, Stanford, USC. So if they navigated it, people figured they'd be in the mix for a New Year's Six Bowl. Add the Brian Kelly factor, he'd built steady success, and fans trusted that with key talent returning, Notre Dame could hang with anyone. But reality hit hard. The Irish went 4-8, their worst record since 2007. That's not just underwhelming, it's flat out disappointing. They lost to teams that weren't even bowl eligible. We all saw games where they jumped out early, double-digit first-half leads, only to collapse in the second half. 3 times. That screams inconsistency and a lack of killer instinct. The defense gave up too many big plays. The offense, while capable, just couldn't close. And yes, a lot of analysts put blame on coaching decisions that didn't adjust fast enough when things unraveled. Why should you care? Because Notre Dame 2016 is the perfect cautionary tale of expectations versus reality. Preseason rankings and brand reputation don't win games. Execution does. Most people thought Notre Dame would be a playoff dark horse, but instead they became an example of how fragile hype can be. If anything, 2016 forced people to question whether the Irish were leaning too much on their name instead of building depth and consistency where it mattered most. Under Penn State. While Notre Dame stumbled, Penn State quietly surprised many in 2016 and proved they were underexpected. Going into the season, they didn't have the same national buzz, but the Nittany Lions ended up 11-3 overall, 8-1 in Big Ten play, and were Big Ten champions. Early losses to Pitt and Michigan saw people doubt Penn State's ceiling, but after that shaky start, they went on a win streak that included a huge upset over number 2 Ohio State. That block 6 moment, a late blocked field goal returned for a touchdown, became symbolic. Penn State showed grit and resilience when games mattered, turned 0 search 18. In the Big Ten championship game, they beat Wisconsin 38-31. That win wasn't predicted by many, especially given Wisconsin's strong reputation in the conference. Penn State proved they could play clutch. They also showed balance. Quarterback Trace McSorley led a dynamic offense, Saquon Barkley emerged as a star runner, and Chris Godwin was a threat. The offense scored, defense made big plays. On paper, no one was expecting dominate performance. They weren't in many preseason top 5 lists, but they built momentum, beat tough teams, and ended the year ranked well. So in 2016, Penn State was definitely underrated. People didn't expect them to make a run, but they handled adversity, made signature wins, won the conference, and nearly made bigger noise. Their season ended with heartbreak in the Rose Bowl loss to USC by 3 points, but by then the respect was earned. 2015, underrated Utah. The 2015 Utah Utes were one of those teams that quietly did everything right, but didn't get nearly as much credit as they deserved. Coached by Kyle Whittingham, they finished 10-3 overall, 6-3 in Pac-12 play, tying for the South Division title. Even though they didn't go to the Pac-12 championship game, their consistency and discipline stood out. Utah showed toughness, winning both of the in-state rivalry games, competing well in conference, and holding their own even in the parts of the season many would have considered stumbling blocks. They closed with a bowl win, Las Vegas Bowl, over BYU, which added a satisfying cap to what was already a strong resume. Their defense was physical. They avoided letting the big moments slip away, and they weren't flashy, but the Utes built something steady, solid, and admirable. Because so many preseason eyes were elsewhere, big programs, Power 5 favorites, Utah flew under discussion, making their success feel like a pleasant surprise rather than an expected outcome. Overrated. Auburn. Auburn entered 2015 with high expectations. They had a top 10 recruiting class, prestige, and momentum under Gus Malzahn. The media and fans thought they might contend for big things in the SEC West, but the season showed that expectations expectations and reality weren't quite aligned. They finished 7-6 overall and 2-6 in SEC play, placing near the bottom of the SEC West. Their conference performance was particularly disappointing, losing a lot more than expected, especially given their roster and yet early hype. Even wins were at times shaky. They barely survived an overtime game against Jacksonville State, an FCS opponent, a game that most thought Auburn should have handled much more comfortably. They did salvage things a bit with a bowl win, the Birmingham Bowl versus Memphis, but that couldn't fully redeem a season in which the hype outweighed the results. 2014, overrated Oklahoma. I'll admit, I had high hopes for Oklahoma in 2014. Most people did. Coming off strong seasons under Bob Stoops, the Sooners were always in the mix. They started 2014 with big preseason rankings. Expectations were championship level. Many thought they'd dominate the Big 12, maybe even contend for the national title. They had talent. Running back Samaje Perine, receiver Sterling Shepard, and quarterback Trevor Knight, who had some flashes, gave them offensive promise. The defense also had solid pieces. The brand, the history, the recruiting, it all suggested Oklahoma would prove to be among the elite. But when the games were played, things didn't go as cleanly as people assumed. A key moment came October 4th when Oklahoma, ranked number 4, got edged 37-33 by TCU in Fort Worth. They were in a tight game, but couldn't close. That kind of close loss stung, especially given their status. Oklahoma also benefited from turnover luck that year. A lot of tight games, they won more than expected in one-possession situations. Some analysts later noted that their turnover recovery and fumble luck tilted in their favor at times. So yeah, Oklahoma looked like a playoff contender on paper, but their performance exposed cracks. Inconsistency in key games, luck in tight moments, and failure to dominate when expected meant they didn't quite match the hype. That's what made them overrated in 2014. Underrated TCU. TCU was quietly building something solid in 2014, even if many people didn't give them full credit early on. They weren't always in the top headlines or favorite bets, but they had a lot going for them. Under Gary Patterson, the Horned Frogs showed steady improvement in discipline. Their offense was dangerous, their defense tight. They had pieces returning, experience, and some big games lined up. What they did was impressive. TCU finished 12-1 overall with an 8-1 record in the Big 12. They tied for the Big 12-12 championship, and they didn't just squeak by, they won their Peach Bowl convincingly, 42-3 over Ole Miss. They pulled off some big upsets too. That win over Oklahoma, 37-33, was a signature moment. Beating such a traditionally strong program on the road was huge. TCU also showed offensive firepower. Their total offense yardage broke program records after implementing more of a spread/air raid style. What people overlooked was how balanced they were. They didn't rely just on one star or one unit. Offense and defense both had strong outings. They could win close games and outscore weaker teams decisively. So in 2014, TCU was underrated. Not many expected them to tie for the Big 12, to reach 12 wins, or to dominate in a major bowl, but they did. Their success showed that quiet consistency beats hype when you believe in the process. 2013, underrated Auburn. Auburn in 2013 was the kind of team people didn't believe in heading into the season. In 2012, they went 3-9 and lost all their SEC games. Expectations were very modest. Then Gus Malzahn came in as head coach and kind of lit a fuse under the program. They won their opener against Washington State in some style. Auburn charged through the season and ended 12-2 overall. They won the SEC championship, beat tough teams like Georgia and Alabama, and nearly went all the way, ending up in the BCS national championship game, only to lose narrowly to Florida State. What made them especially underrated was how far they came from the low of 2012. People didn't expect them to compete at the top of the SEC, much less make it to the national title game. Their defense had holes, but their offense, special teams, and ability to create magic in big moments. Hello, the kick six versus Alabama made them a dangerous team that over-delivered. Auburn's 2013 feels like a season when momentum, coaching, and belief combined to make something greater than the sum of parts. Overrated Georgia. Georgia in 2013 was seen as a strong program, carrying tradition, high expectations, and a solid roster. People expected them to challenge at the top of the SEC East and possibly succeed in big games, but ultimately Georgia finished 8-5 overall and 5-3 in SEC play. They had some memorable wins over LSU, Florida, Tennessee, in overtime, for example, but performed inconsistently, especially down the stretch. They lost to Auburn in a very high-scoring game, 43-38, that cost them ground. Their bowl game was also a letdown. They lost the Gator Bowl to Nebraska by a slim margin. Georgia's offense was strong. Aaron Murray threw for over 3,000 yards, Todd Gurley was emerging, etc. But that talent didn't always translate to consistency, especially in high-leverage situations. Sometimes they seemed to lean on their reputation more than execution. The overrated label struggle here isn't that they were bad, it's that expectations were higher than what they delivered overall. But what do you guys think? Was 2013 Georgia truly overrated? Or do you think they were just unlucky with timing and tough matchups? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if there's another team or season you want me to break down, let me know. I can make a part 2. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the other videos linked on the end screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.